At a time he was bereft of ideas, musician Brian Eno was given a rather specific problem to solve. Create a sound that was bold, futuristic, sentimental, emotional, optimistic, and exactly 3¼ seconds long. Inspired by this restriction, Eno created 84 pieces of micro music, one of which you and billions more have heard. The Windows 95 startup jingle. Within this tight restriction, Eno created the sound that inspired a generation of PC users. Ironically, he composed it on a Mac. This story illustrates that it is limitation, not possibility, that stimulates creativity. A truth reflected in the following videos. Welcome to
Improv comedy can make you a better person, and here's how, in 60 seconds. Improv scenes are usually made up of 2 to 4 people who all have the same goal. Initially, you might think that goal is to be funny. That's what makes improv so scary, right? You think of yourself standing in front of a crowd, stage fright gnawing at your hypothalamus, and now you have to make a room full of strangers laugh. That's the real goal, not to be funny, to make the audience laugh. The first is something you have to do by yourself. The second is something you can do as a team. When performers are too interested in their own individual funniness, they can miss opportunities to build the funny together. You set each other up. You look for opportunities to give your mates a boost, and they take that setup and dunk it into the joke net. In improv, this is called giving gifts. Aww. So here's my favorite lesson from improv comedy. Your job on stage is not to be as successful as possible. It's to make the person next to you as successful as possible. And if you're doing that for them, and they're doing that for you, then suddenly, being on stage is a whole lot less scary.
I want to introduce you to one of my favourite competitions, one that I've entered for years and never placed in, Adam Cadre's fabulously funny Lyttle Lytton. The task is to write the worst possible opening to a novel you can muster. Spun off from the Bulwer Lytton Fiction Contest, which grants a paragraph, Lyttle Lytton gives you 200 characters. This may sound simple, but here's the rub. It has to be something you can imagine an aspiring non-comedy novelist acting in earnest would put to paper. And that creates a strange but enthralling dichotomy, which Cadre calls intentional-unintentional comedy. We know every entry to be fake, but the comedy comes from being sharp enough to cut through that disbelief while suggesting the entire novel to follow. Despite the 20 years the competition has ran, Cadre still understandably struggles to discern this imagined line of believable parody. It presents some of the shortest, sharpest, funniest writing under one of the toughest stipulations I can imagine. And one day, I hope to write something worthy of at least appearing.
Chess is famous for its long and calculating battles of wit. Bullet chess takes that traditionally slow-paced gameplay and replaces it with unadulterated chaos. Standard Grandmaster chess tournaments give 90 minutes, but bullet chess gives only 1. Without the time to think and plan like in normal chess, players train pattern recognition and flash instinct. In bullet chess, strategies that are stupid in regular chess are employed, making meaningless stalling moves, absurdly out-of-left-field attacks, or even leaving pieces in grave danger and just hoping your opponent doesn't notice. In normal chess, there are death sentences, but these moves work in speed chess. While fast, players still need to make good moves. Threats of checkmate still loom. In addition to the significant mental challenge of playing a normal chess game at 60 times speed, it's physically intense. Players fumble pieces, knocking them over and slamming them sloppily on the board as their hand darts back and forth between the clock and the pieces. It's peak physical comedy. Making chess minutes long radically changes it. It's the same rules, but with a wild new feel. One I recommend checking out.
Hey, I want to show you something. Quick, we don't have much time. Back in the 80s, the vast majority of PCs were found in offices. Even so, there were a lot of PC games being released. And because people played these games where their computers were, at work, some of them had a function built in called the boss key. When you press this key, the game would instantly be replaced with a fake screenshot, maybe of a spreadsheet, that might pass casual inspection and keep the slacking employee out of trouble. Some were simple, some were elaborate and convincing. Others were pranks at the expense of the player. They'd show something more incriminating than the game. The boss key died out with the rise of Windows. It only makes sense to have one when you're running a single-task operating system. But the idea isn't dead, it's just been replaced with the ultimate system-level boss key, Alt. Yeah, I'm just working on it now. Well, these things take more than a minute.
In the second half of Final Fantasy VI, the party gets swallowed by a giant worm and finds this playable mimic called Gogo. Draped in colorful garments, a completely impractical nightmare to draw, they're secretly a super cool character. It's not hard to love this mysterious worm spelunker despite only having a few lines of dialogue and no real identity. In fact, their introduction is centered entirely around their ambiguous gender, which of course made the fandom speculate that behind that mask was secretly a slew of potential candidates. With no official mask off, it seems people projected their own ideas onto this empty vessel, and in that way, as a mimic, Gogo may occupy both roles. Man or woman, gender is a performance that is perceived by the audience. So perhaps for our apparent need to identify Gogo, we accidentally revealed more about ourselves, and ended up with a pretty cool gender non-conforming character. You go, Gogo.
Fans of Final Fantasy VI have a right to be concerned about a new reimagining of the game's art style. Nobody can forget those tragic mobile and Steam ports that brought with them lifeless character sprites that define the unaesthetic. But what made the aesthetic of the original so great? For me, it was the sheer hopelessness of the world it presented, throwing out the series' previous vibrant colours and replacing its medieval setting with a dark, desaturated industrial one. The world was much more reminiscent of our own. The harrowing horrors of the Magitech were complemented by 16-bit sprite work that was exceptionally detailed. Just look at the environments, character portraits and enemies. Even the character sprites, while not as detailed as those elements, carried with them so much expression and life that make them feel so special. Hopefully this briefly contextualizes why those mobile ports are so hated and why another reimagining is as scary to those like me who see FF6 as a visual triumph. Please don't mess this up. Oh god, look at the new font.
Why do you do anything? Usually because you want to accomplish something, right? Big or small, pay your power bill to keep the lights on, open the fridge for that leftover Chipotle. Most actions we take are done for a reason, and every mechanic in video games is there for a purpose, for a goal. Jump to kill, X to pass, ZL to target, all these buttons to drop your combo, but I have a soft spot for those mechanics that are pointless, at least in the context of playing the game. Pressing A to yell, Mario! In Luigi's Mansion accomplishes nothing in the game, but it feels natural to do it. The same can be said of ringing your bell in Earthbound, seducing your enemies in Bayo, flexing that sword sheath in Zelda, or hitting the sing button in Grease only for her to then be reminded that she's lost her voice. These games are perfectly beatable and enjoyable without these little options, but I think their fruitlessness makes them relatable. Not everything we do in life is practical. Sometimes goofy little meanderings are what make us human, like doing one of these or blowing bubbles in your drink. Why are you doing that? Just because. Also, Oddworld has a dedicated fart button. Thank you.
The Sonic the Hedgehog comic book is an action-based superpower series full of good old-fashioned Japanese-influenced fistfights. But it wasn't always like this. The series began as a Frankenstein product, combining the slapstick comedy of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog with the characters of the Saturday morning cartoon. There were fight scenes, of course, but as per the guidelines, Sonic only ever fought using spin dashes or clever uses of speed, and this carried over into the comics. It wasn't until the cartoons were cancelled did the comic team turn to other sources for inspiration. This time, it was manga. 1996's Super Sonic vs. Hyper Knuckles saw the series' very first punch, and Mecha Madness saw the inclusion of bigger cinematic set pieces. But it wouldn't be until the milestone issue 50 in 1997 that the transition would be cemented. The climax of the arc was a 4-page fistfight between Sonic and Robotnik, where all the dialogue was removed and its emotional weight leaned fully on the action. And in this moment, the comic's transition from slapstick comedy to superpower-based action was complete.
Amazing Spider-Man issue 801, There For You, comes at the very end of Dan Slott's hundreds of issues long run on Spider-Man. But for all its ups and downs, the author ended on something perfect. With Marcos Martin on art, it starts with a young Spider-Man saving a man's life, only to focus on the man instead of the hero, seeing the life he lived in the years between their meetings. No clones, no symbiotes, no goblins, just loss, love, family, joy, all the moments that make up a person. Through this prism, we see that every life saved is a world saved. Every person out there means the world to somebody, and Spidey's out there risking his neck for all of them. Their best friends, their husbands, their girlfriends, their moms, their uncles. It's why I keep coming back to Spider-Man, even when the good stories disappear for years. Because Spider-Man's eternal fight is our fight. For my friends, for my family, I won't be around as long as Spider-Man, but as long as I'm here, all I want to be is here for you.
Short list of things I don't like that much. Number 1, sports. Number 2, anime. Want to know what I do like? Sports anime. How is it possible for me to dislike the two core components of something, but thoroughly enjoy the melding of the two? Well, for starters, watching sports is confusing. I mean, what's going on here? Where's the ball? An anime, on the other hand. Jesus, you see that shit? The ball hit the ground before he did. What the? I don't even know the rules to most sports, but the anime forums make sure to explain it like you don't even know what a point means, so there's no real issue following along. Secondly, unlike its kin in the form of general shonen, sports shows seem to have a way more relatable storyline. Who's the good guy in normal anime? Guy with crazy hair that has magic powers and wants to protect his friends. Who's the bad guy? Evil monster man who wants to destroy the universe because it did him wrong years ago. Sports though? Who's the good guy? This kid who wants to be the best at sports. Who's the bad guy? The other team who wants to be good at sports. Morality out the window, baby. This is f***ing volleyball. All you need for stakes is a genuine connection with your favorite team. So go now, watch some cartoons about teenagers playing basketball or whatever. It's pretty cool.
Diacon 3 and 4 were two anime shorts produced for the 1981 and 83 Diacon Sci-Fi Convention in Osaka, Japan. And while combined their runtime is barely over 11 minutes long, they are perhaps two of the most important films in anime history. Today the films have taken on an almost legendary status for reasons such as the ridiculous amount of talent on display for what was technically a work of amateur animation. But it's probably more the filmmakers themselves that have in retrospect made the film so historically relevant. What started out as just a trio of animators during the production of Diacon 3 eventually grew to 12 by the completion of Diacon 4, after which the group founded Studio Gainax, the creators of Fooly Cooly, Gurren Lagann, and of course, Neon Genesis Evangelion. And while Gainax became famous for their trademark style, they also exemplified an important shift that every medium goes through, the moment when the fans start taking over. They were a team of college dropouts making anime fueled by a lifelong love of the art form itself. And it's that same passion found in these two shorts that helped Gainax leave a lasting mark on the world of anime forever. And all of this, everything that I've just told you, none of it is actually why these films are important.
To some people, family is everything, but really, what is family? Does it have to be a blood relative? Could it be someone who also just drives a car? I want to look at two movies that explore this and what they mean. Now in the Tigger movie circa 2000, Tigger realizes that there may be something darker to the phrase, and I'm the only one. Where are the other Tiggers, and when can they all bounce together? With that in mind, Tigger sets off on an epic quest to find his family, ignoring his friends who try to tell him, Tigger, we are your family. Him ignoring this causes him to nearly die in a blizzard. His friends come to rescue him, professing their love for him, and Tigger realizes that, oh, this is my family. It's very sweet. Now in 2017's Hey Arnold the Jungle movie, things are similar. Arnold goes to the jungle trying to find his explorer parents, which was clearly always a cover story, except Arnold's friends join him for the journey and there are wacky hijinks with a cartel. And then look at that, your parents were asleep in the jungle the whole time and they're your family. Your real family. So in conclusion, the people who made this movie were absolute cowards, and apparently not even Nicktoons are immune from cartels and the war on drugs, which is, frankly, bizarre.
There's a moment in BoJack Horseman's 5th season that makes me want to jump out of my skin. Todd and Emily are high school sweethearts who try to give it another whirl as adults, through which Todd starts to come to terms with the fact that he is asexual. The two stay friends, and Emily has a lot of sex with firefighters but can't find a meaningful romantic connection. When she laments this to Todd, he comes up with a perfect plan. He'll be Emily's asexual boyfriend, and she can have sex with this robot he built.
Come on!
If there's just another option that feels so glaringly obvious, ethical non-monogamy. If Emily has plenty of sex but no romance, and Todd is interested in her romantically but not sexually, then a romantic relationship that is sexually open within negotiated boundaries just might fit the bill. It also might not, but the fact that they have a whole conversation and they get to Emily Googled asexuality, so what if Todd just had sex with her and Todd built her a sex robot, and not to what about an open relationship? God damn, I feel it in my bones. It is too fucking real. I love it.
The drum set. The only thing stopping a guitar player from finding that perfect tuning. Dude, can you stop for like 2 seconds, please? Yeah, don't ever buy one. They're ear-splittingly loud. You pay the price of a crappy used car for pieces of wood that you beat that shit out of, and you have to have your own place to even play the damn thing. You paid $10 for 2 pieces of wood that either last 2 minutes or 2 years, and you have no idea on how long this pair is gonna last. They are heavy and awkward to move. There's never a convenient place to set them up. Every little part is way more expensive than you probably think. And I don't know if you've ever seen just how impossible it is to fit a bass drum in a car. You just get in there. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because there's no greater feeling than just sitting down after a long day's work and just playing a slow, relaxing beat.
One question has plagued humankind for decades. What do the Backstreet Boys want? They tell us in the song I Want It That Way that they want it that way. But this poses more questions than it answers. Such as, what is that way that the Backstreet Boys want it? And what is it that the Backstreet Boys want that way? The line out of context makes no sense. So to understand it, we have to work our way backwards through the song. The previous line reveals that what the Backstreet Boys actually want is to never hear you say, I want it that way. But going back even further, the Backstreet Boys plead to be told why this is the case. So ultimately, what the Backstreet Boys want is for you to tell them why they don't want to hear you say that you want it that way. Which honestly sounds quite unreasonable to me. What am I, a mind reader? As for what it is they want and which way they want it is still unclear. Good communication is foundational to a strong relationship. So in conclusion, I would kill the Backstreet Boys, marry NSYNC, and
Pause and take a look at this track list. Besides the Evangelion references in the song titles, what you'll probably notice is the song lengths. Most of them sit comfortably between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, and only a single one breaks the 3-minute mark. How can something this short feel significant? Presented in a sea of other tiny songs, how can they stand out? Put simply, it's the riffs. Where the hooks of most songs line the vocals, grindcore albums such as this one rarely make a point of giving strong melodies to their vocals at all. Instead, great grindcore musicians master the art of memorable riffs, played quickly enough to energize but not so quick as to be indecipherable. Your first time through a grindcore album, you probably won't catch which riffs are the really hooky ones, but with albums being as relatively short as their tracks are, by listen 2 or 3, you'll know, and that third time Pig Destroyer's Hyperviolet comes on, you'll get hyped into the stratosphere just like I am every single time.
XXL 2019 freshman rapper Tierra Whack hasn't released a full body of work since getting the supposedly prestigious title. The only complete body of work we have is 2018's Whack World, a 15-minute long project with 15 tracks, each exactly a minute long. The project is bursting from the seams with ideas, but listening to it from front to back brings to light the project's biggest apparent weakness. None of these tracks feel complete. Bug's Life ends right before its chorus. Pretty Ugly cuts off in the middle of a verse. It makes one wonder what these tracks would have sounded like if completed, especially since the singles released since Whack World have been hit after hit after hit. What would Pet Sematary sound like when the beat finally dropped? What would a second verse on Fruit Salad sound like? Because of this, it kind of feels wrong to listen to this project in its current state in a way, as if the project is just a set of scattered ideas, a rough mix assembled in Logic Pro in a half hour just to get an opinion. The problem with that thought process is that the production is immaculate. Tierra sounds great. So what does that mean? It means that these songs are actually complete. There is no second verse. There is no rest of that hook. And that means that
Everyone has their favourite era of pop punk, whether it be the Ramones in the 70s or now with Machine Gun Kelly. My favourite will always be that mid-2000s to late 2010s sound inspired by grunge and emo, led by bands such as Basement, Superheaven, and my favourite of all time, Title Fight. Title Fight had that ever-evolving sound that, despite never sitting still, always felt like theirs. Most bands of the time, and still to this day, have played catch-up to what was laid down by the Five Piece from Kingston, Pennsylvania. Starting in 2003, releasing 3 albums and a plethora of singles, EPs, and splits, Title Fight is a fantastic case study in how to grow up playing music in the same band, maturing a sound as you all stop being teenagers and become adults. Writing very recognizably pop-punk songs like Goldweight in 2007 to the shoegaze-inspired Chlorine. Title Fight are the greatest band to never officially break up, but with the way of the current pop-punk landscape, maybe it's best they stay on hiatus, because no one stays on top forever.
Everyone grieves differently. For the B-52s, I believe they grieve through song. In 1989, the band released Cosmic Thing. It was their big comeback album after a 3-year hiatus due to the death of their lead guitarist, Ricky Wilson, who was also fellow band member Cindy Wilson's brother. Cosmic Thing is, perhaps against all odds, really great. It's an exciting, fun album featuring some of their most famous tracks like Rome and Love Shack. But the most interesting track is definitely the final one, Follow Your Bliss. After 40 plus minutes of bubbly melodies and playful lyrics, we're treated to an instrumental. It's unmistakably B-52s, but without any vocals, the lead guitar takes center stage, and something about it feels melancholic. The song gives you a moment to just breathe and reflect. Follow Your Bliss feels like it's meant as a loving tribute to their former band member and brother Ricky. It's a track that, with the right context, manages to say quite a lot with very little.
Hello, it's me, Darkfry, a little pink iridescent blob that starts every video by saying, "Hello, it's me, Darkfry," followed by a humorous and usually verbose description that sets up the tone of the video, as well as my character. It's meant to be a lighthearted and fun way to start and introduce people to me, Darkfry, the vehicle of the ideas presented in every video. Ideas that aren't mine. I read them from a script. A script that isn't here, because it's part of me. The script is who I am, much like a video game character is a model and some code. Every time I say, "Hello, it's me, Darkfry," I struggle to find what to say next. I only know because of the script. If I change all the time, do I even have an identity? And if I don't, can you relate to me? Oh, is my time up? That was just the intro. Shit!
Horror Sublime, an elegy in dactylic hexameter. Can horror yield sublime? Pure bliss is not divine. Fear the grape, beauty wine. Fear in play, shock or dread, power gained from the dead. Overcome, challenge tread. Numbers and skill prevail, logic and fun derail. The player cannot fail. Powerless? Uncanny. Powerless is not me. Knowing strength, that must be after the failing rod. Something more, grandeur, broad. Feel my strength, dwarfed by God. Horror in software bind. This the game hope to find. Can games make fear sublime?
Okay, we gotta go fast. We only have a minute to talk about time limits. One of the most valuable things I have learned from game jams and my 31 days of a drawing a day is that forcing yourself to make and release something within a short period of time can drastically help you learn one of the most valuable lessons for making art. Create something and then let go of it. Move on to the next thing and learn what you can from the last piece. Keep making, keep releasing, keep moving to the next thing. You will learn what parts are essential to getting something done, and where you can improve your process. As well, time limits force you to get creative. You have to just get it done, no hesitation. And because of this, you will try things you would not consider otherwise, and learn that even bad ideas, executed well, can have value. When you do these types of challenges, it's important not to overwork yourselves. Ideas from these small projects often inspire larger, more complete pieces. Games like Superhot came out of game jams. Just make sure you have enough time to get everything done.
Oh, what's that? I've only got a minute. Okay, I better make this one quick. The biggest staple the Resident Evil franchise brought to the gaming landscape other than the take on survival horror is the use of safe rooms. There's something so awesome now that you survived another round of survival horror and you've actually made progress in the story and actually been able to offload accompanied by some calming music. But other than acting as a checkpoint or a save state, they actually act as your sanctum of safety and the barriers between you and the stresses of the games or whatever the hell they want to throw at you. They make you feel like you're in complete control by taking a moment out and making sure you feel safe. There's a reason why you never see these safe rooms using the more action-oriented entries. That's because Capcom are trying to sell you the feeling of being high and keeping that adrenaline pumping through your body to make you feel like you're Chris Leon in a war zone. Actually, by being able to have that choice and stepping out of all the stresses in the world and disconnecting yourself makes it feel a lot more threatening and makes it feel like there's something that you have to survive against inside this world. By the developers advising you to stop and take a break, it creates an unsettling sense of something that you can't escape or control. By the end of the game, save points will be so far in between that they won't even feature save music anymore, and that's because they're trying to sell this feeling to you that you're in complete control of your situation. You've gone through so much that you don't even need to rely on the safety of a safe room anymore, and I think that's a fantastic way to show growth in the character. And also, just take a break. Don't overstress yourself. Good job.
Jill Valentine is one of gaming's most iconic characters of all time. We follow her story as she survives the horrors of Spencer Mansion and Raccoon City, in the first and third mainline Resident Evil games respectively. Yet despite the hours spent playing as her, I never really learned much about her. It was only in the first few minutes of the RE3 remake that, for the first time, you see through the eyes of Jill Valentine. There are clothes scattered across her bed, and numerous pills on her bedside table, as well as piles of dirty dishes and overflowing trash cans. A wall is covered with newspaper clippings and documents piecing together Umbrella's crimes, accompanied by boxes of official records on the floor. The psychological toll that the events of the first game have taken are evident, and we see a haunting nightmare that, according to Jill, gets worse every night.
Are horror games better with or without weapons? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Can you repeat the question? Actually, maybe we should be asking a completely different question. Should horror games always be about the threat of physical violence? Weapons or no weapons, that's usually what the player has to be afraid of. But a lot of things that make us afraid are not based on violence at all. Anxiety, peer pressure, not fitting in with a particular social group, not having enough money to pay the next rent, or just the inevitability of death. Not as in being found and killed by some seemingly unstoppable monster, but that far away, natural, or even accidental death that will eventually come for us all. I do love me some headshotting zombie action now and then. I also love the rush of successfully sneaking past someone or something that would have me dead in an instant. But I feel that there's so much more to horror than that, and we're not going to find it through the iron sights of a gun.
Have you ever noticed guns in video games often have various different names even though they are the same gun? What is called a Glock 18 in one game may be called a Kowloon Type 40 in another. This is a common trope referred to as the A.K.A. 47, a play on the classic Kalashnikov rifle. The reason this happens so much in video games is because firearms are licensed products from their respective manufacturers. The Glock 18 is owned by, well, Glock, the Scar is owned by FN Herstal, and the classic AK-47 is the property of bandits and gopniks. Oddly enough, video games becoming more of an artistic expression over the years has allowed certain privileges, such as not needing to license the guns that they use. Just like a book can use the name Colt or Mossberg, a video game can use the product of said company to tell their story. Even more odd, video game developers are usually the initiators of changing the gun names to try to keep a distance between video game violence and the real world, because we all know the golden AR is less dangerous than the FN Herstal Scar, right? Right?
It's the guy from Fortnite!
Threes is the emblem of my anxiety. I've played the game off and on for, 7 years. It keeps my hands busy and my mind unmoored from whatever might be bothering me at the moment. It's a tile game. Players slide the tiles around to their matching tiles, which creates a new tile. The game, ostensibly, has an ending, and in the time I've been playing, I've never gotten there. Threes both soothes and exacerbates my anxiety. These 3 remaining spaces have never been filled across the 4 or so phones I've owned in the past 7 years, and while the gameplay is fun, the music is charming, and the tile characters endearing, seeing a goal just out of reach for so long is grating. I should put it down. But I know I'll inevitably pick it up again and just swipe and swipe until time's up.
Kami is a simple game. Using the equivalent of Paint's fill-in bucket, you try to make homogeneous an abstract image of color and paper. You must do this in as few clicks as possible. It surely requires some amount of ingenuity, but primarily, the game asks for one thing: your patience. It is a contemplative experience, one which seeks to teach you to measure twice, cut once. Julius Caesar once wrote, "It is easier to find men who will volunteer to die than to find those who are willing to endure pain with patience." While I would hardly call Kami painful, I would rather run into a flurry of bullets in Ultra Kill or Counter-Strike than patiently fold paper. But that's the difference between a want and a need. Sometimes I need to slow down, reflect, draw inward, and be patient, because it is in such stillness that the soul grows, and I've still got a lot of growing to do.
Prawn Cocktail Crisps. Taste a little bit sweet and a little bit tangy, and absolutely nothing like a prawn cocktail. In 1929, René Magritte debuted The Treachery of Images, a painting of a tobacco pipe with the caption underneath which reads, if you'll pardon my French, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," or "This is not a pipe." And it isn't. It's a painting of a pipe. Our brains love to invest emotionally in artificial sensory experiences. A few simple lines can create an image that most people will recognize as a human. But our brains also draw connections based on cultural precedent. Draw a stick figure just so, and it becomes a guide to finding a public toilet. Soon the initial meaning can be entirely lost. Someone eating a prawn cocktail crisp would be disappointed if it actually tasted like shellfish dipped in mayonnaise. Instead, they would want something a little bit sweet and a little bit tangy, and absolutely nothing like a prawn cocktail.
What you're about to watch is a game of competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee. Axe vs Silent Wolf, Pikachu vs Fox, final game of the set. This game is special because it's over in a single minute. You may know about competitive Smash Bros, and you may even know about Melee, a game that, intentional or not, is filled to the brim with advanced techniques that require laser levels of precision to execute. There are levels to how good people are at this game, and at the time, these two players were some of the best. Silent Wolf, one of the most technical foxes in the game, and Axe, a master of the Yellow Thunder, the only top 100 player that plays Pikachu. And yet, sometimes when one player faces an opponent of equal skill, it's possible to just get completely destroyed. It's all about momentum. You cannot lose focus for even a second. But if you're good enough, if you're quick enough, you might be able to achieve something beautiful.
Do you remember Trackmania Nations? If you have ever played it, you probably do. The controls are easy, the gameplay is satisfying, the graphics still hold up, and oh well, there is a tiny problem. If this made you quit, but you enjoyed this without having to pay anything at all, I have good news for you. In my experience, the best way to play Trackmania is party mode. Assemble your friends and family for gaming night and write a short list, each consisting of a few track elements. Then make the track in the level editor and try it. Repeat the process for even more fun. My brothers and I made some of the most exciting maps to play on with this method, and the best thing is, it's just as quick, free and easy as pouring river water in your socks.
Originally released at the beginning of the GameCube's lifespan, Pikmin was a concept meant to do one thing and one thing alone, and that was flex. But what once served as a tech demo for the GameCube evolved into a niche franchise that still has its appeal to this day for some. And if you're new to the party, then you realize that we're 20 years out from the release of this game from those halcyon days of Blockbuster George W. Bush. So you begin to wonder, why is Pikmin so popular? The first and most obvious appeal is the aesthetic. Pikmin offers semi-high concept sci-fi on a miniature level with things like using alien armies to combat strong native wildlife like Stargate, but it puts on the scale of Toy Story. That and, well, let's just be honest, Pikmin are adorable, especially you, Purple Pikmin, you're my favorite. This bleeds over into gameplay where you begin to form a bond with your little party, and the more Pikmin you have, the better you feel. But sadly, this is where Pikmin loses many folks. Never forget the lives lost in the Great Pikmin Bridge Cross of 03.
All the humanity, all the tragedy.
But that's why we get back up to do it all again tomorrow.
There just isn't another medium that carries the potency of repetition quite like video games do. How often do we find ourselves completely stuck on how to defeat a boss, only to hear for the 40th time some Wednesday evening? The repetition of voice lines defines your experience with a game. It infuriates and motivates. Many children have been haunted by catching a train, or getting on the Hydra's back, or dancing water. Hearing these lines over and over again adds immeasurable insult to injury. Imagine my frustration after dying to Harbinger in Mass Effect 2 again and again and hearing, "This hurts you, Shepard," as I perish once again. But nowadays, this medium-specific element to video games is frighteningly comforting to me, and I don't want to see it go away. It's like an artist who chooses not to get rid of some blemish on their piece. It builds heart, it builds spirit, a canon of character built amongst a new form of art.
Most of the time when looking at amazing soundtracks, we tend to think about how the music is used to elevate the gameplay or make scenes memorable. How specific songs are utilized in effective ways, but what about when a soundtrack is just for an aesthetic?
Doesn't that seem a bit underwhelming though?
I initially thought the same, but after sitting on it for a while, I realized that if done right, it can be just as effective. Look at Coffee Talk and its diegetic lo-fi OST. The sound of soothing beats greets you as you're introduced to a world where fantasy creatures and humans coexist. As you begin the night's service, the pittering rain hitting the dark streets of Seattle provides a backing to the wonderfully calming music as you talk with Freya and serve her triple shot espresso. The scene is set for a relaxing yet thoughtful time as your customers drown their sorrows away. Then maybe this tune isn't your vibe, so you flick on the shuffle app and... None of the songs are dedicated to a specific character or event, but that's not the goal of the music. It's there to set the mood and provide an aesthetic through line even when things get a little wacky in the virtual cafe.
It's not Rock Band. It's not Brutal Legend. It's not even Doom 2016 or Eternal. Hades is the best heavy metal video game. Setting aside the fact that the game takes place in the ancient underworld, magma-besotted hellscapes, and ruined, corrupted temples, I can't think of another game out there that isn't about music that so masterfully uses its sounds as well and properly as Hades. It's a soundtrack that lulls with intrigue and ambience. It gorges itself on seemingly endless versatility, and yet somehow, before you realize that it's headed in an upwards trajectory at all, it'll flatten you when it terminates with some of the hugest riffs and sounds in music. The more you play, the deeper you go, the more you're starting to feel like you could actually fight the horrors of the underworld, or the fallen warriors of paradise. I've never played a game that made me feel so much like I was there, in the pit, just absolutely working through some shit.
RPG Maker has a problem. Many people associate games made in this engine with low quality. I've had friends say no thanks to games just for looking like they might have been made in RPG Maker. It's easy to see why. Steam is filled with cheap RPG Maker games that either use the default assets and end up looking exactly the same as each other, or concentrate on certain other aspects to bring in sales. RPG Maker's incredibly low barrier to entry is both its greatest strength and weakness, its own advertising going as far as to say it's powerful enough for a developer and simple enough for a child. Despite that, the engine's been behind some truly fantastic games over the years that really show off what RPG Maker's capable of in the right hands. Some titles have even been ported to modern consoles or spun out into entire franchises with anime adaptations. So please remember, RPG Maker is just a tool, meaning it's only as good as the person using it.
Video game development has never been as approachable and accessible as it is today. Various tools and engines are freely available for developers to use, and many boast no-code solutions for newcomers. But there's a catch. The more frameworks and libraries you tack onto a project, the less of it is under your control. You're bound to introduce some unneeded complexity. In games, this sort of bloat will end up manifesting in the form of the minimum spec requirements. A game built from scratch will always need less impressive hardware to run than one built in a generalist engine. So tools that are said to be empowering creatives to skip past the hard and boring aspects of development, they're just shifting the burden to someone else. The game has been made easier to make, but at the cost of being harder to run. And you must remember, there are some people in the world whose first computer will be a Raspberry Pi. Look, if you're a developer, then it's up to you to think about. Are you okay with your game's requirements excluding players who can't meet them, or are you trying to make something that you hope will appeal to a global audience? I think it's totally fair to admit that if that's not your goal, but if it is, then optimization is something to consider. After all, there's a reason Minecraft had such reach and impact, and it's not just because it's a banging game by all accounts, it's also because it was written in Java and can run on a fucking toaster.
I want to talk about the word play, and what it even means in the current age of gritty cinematic games. Is this play? Is this play? I want to say the word play has all but ceased to mean anything. Then I boot up Rocket League. Rocket League is pure play, pure joy, pure just one more round fun. While AAA devs ruthlessly crunch in the name of technical perfection, Rocket League is still here to remind us that all we really need for play are the moments we get when 6 cars and a ball collide. The engines roaring to life in sweaty anticipation of the kickoff. The euphoric rush, yes, of hitting a last-second winner. And the sweet, unbearable tension of being 1 goal down with 1 minute remaining.
Hello you, Guru Larry here. And now I'm a water sprinkler. Why the fuck am I doing this?
The truth is, the significance of Diacon 3 and 4 doesn't just stop at the borders of what we define as anime culture. I mean, just look at them. This is what the entirety of pop culture looks like today. They're basically every trailer breakdown channel's wet dream, packed to the gills with nerdy Easter eggs and obscure references that are on screen for less than a second. Way before Ready Player One or Space Jam 2, there was Diacon 3 and 4, an unlikely harbinger of what was to come. And perhaps the cruelest irony is, although these films were made by fans to celebrate fandom, you could never make them today. Between the unlicensed music and the litany of iconic characters, characters, most of which are now owned by Disney, these films would get utterly buried in DMCAs. Or if you're a group of enthusiasts trying to restore Diacon 3 itself, well then you just get a cease and desist from Gainax directly. As media rights have been consolidated more and more over time, their corporate owners have been more than happy to exploit fandom for profit. The movies and shows may be the product, but your passion and your nostalgia is the resource they're mining, and they're not going to stop until they've sucked it all dry. So sadly, the real reason Diacon 3 and 4 are so important is because we'll likely never see anything like them again.
Alright, Eggman, let's get this party started.
I don't really listen to a lot of music on its own. Most of my library is comprised of video game tunes. Makes it hard to start a conversation, but I also really like listening to music specifically created for something. I think it's a pretty universal feeling to listen to a song and get taken back to an emotion or memory. With video games though, it's like I'm reliving that first experience playing it. It gets me pumped, it gets me down, it hits me like a truck. It allows me to further appreciate a moment or set piece in a game, and it has become such a transcendental experience that it makes browsing random music a struggle, even if I genuinely want to broaden my taste. So maybe I can't talk to you about Ariana Grande, but I can certainly live up the opening notes of Egg Fleet while I'm on my Sunday drive.
I film and edit wedding videos for a living, and music is maybe the most important element of my videos. I spend hours looking for the right song. But this song isn't one I've used for a wedding. Actually, this is from the soundtrack of a mobile game, Alto's Adventure. More specifically, the game's Zen mode. In Zen mode, there's no score, no game over, just the flow of the mountain and this beautiful music. Engaging with something that requires all of your focus but not all of your brain power leads to a meditative experience. Video games can be so many different things to different people, but my personal experience with this mode shows me how special video games can be. For me, this makes Alto's Adventure the perfect mobile game, whether I need to chill out for an hour or just another minute.
The popularity of roguelikes has soared in the past few years, with games like Hades truly breaking into the mainstream. These days, there's a whole heap to choose from if you're interested in the genre, but I think my favorite of them all is Spelunky 2. It's a roguelike platformer that has a reputation for being overly difficult, punishing, and some would say bullshit. I love this game for so many reasons, but I'm gonna pick one weird example to give you an idea of what it's like. Let's break it down. A vampire triggered an arrow trap that reacts to movement. The arrow hit the vampire, and then the vampire fell on me, dealing 1 damage and stunning me. Finally, the vampire bounced off the ground and hit me once again with its body, dealing just enough damage to kill me. If the thought of this happening 20 minutes into a run is upsetting to you, maybe skip this game. But if you can laugh at the comedy and beauty of the game systems interacting like this, please play this game right now.
Rooftop Cop has almost nothing in it. It is a collection of 5 vignettes, 2 of which I don't even know what you're supposed to do in them. This game is almost impenetrable in its message, and yet it feels like it's trying to scream something at you. You simply cannot play Rooftop Cop without feeling like there is a deeper meaning that you are somehow missing. You will have theories, but none will feel satisfying. As I played it in voice chat with a few friends, we spent an hour trying to unravel one particular minigame. And I think we failed. Was it about environmentalism, loneliness, decay, futility? I don't think I'll ever know. How could I? There are no footholds to gain purchase. It's a brick wall of a game. It's polished to a mirror sheen. It's as if the game is asking not to be analyzed, but reflected on. This isn't supposed to mean anything on its own.
When I was younger, I loved Mega Man.
I was obsessed with Mega Man. I was the type of kid that filled my sketchbooks with doodles of my own robot masters. I never stopped waiting for the next installment. But then, this guy came along. What the heck was this Mega Man Legends crap? Why were there Lego men? Who were these clowns? And where were the robot masters? I ignored the game for years, condemning and refusing to play it. Then long after its release, I finally gave it a shot. And I loved it. I very nearly missed out on playing a fantastic game, one that is among my favorites in the franchise, because of my stubborn notions about what could or couldn't bear the name Mega Man. I'll always appreciate Mega Man Legends, not just for being a fun, classic title, but also for the lesson I'll never forget, to approach media with at least a willingness to step outside of my comfort zone.
There is a war for a pig farmer's soul. He has been working for the mob for decades. They need a body disposed of, it ends up in his pig pen. But those years have worn on him, and he wants out. Only problem is that there's only one way out of the mob, and that road ends in his own pig pen. But the farmer's would-be executioner also happens to be his closest friend. Maybe he can lean on his compassion and find mercy. Could the farmer actually cheat death? Well, Adios keeps you guessing until the end. Because there's a war for Adios's soul, too. From the very first scene, it is crystal clear that there is only one way this ends, and that's in a pig pen. But this is also a game with branching conversations and little ways you can change the narrative. Mechanically, it promises that the future is not set in stone. These are two contradictory promises. Before the end, one must be revealed to be false, and the other, the ultimate truth. Is the farmer doomed, or could the player actually cheat death? Well, Adios keeps you guessing until the end.
I have a problem. Just one? On first attempt, I struggle to get immersed in first-person games. That doesn't make sense, right? I mean, you're literally staring down the nose of the lead character. But still, it's taken me forever to finish Skyrim and Bioshock, and to this day, I've never completed Alien Isolation or Dishonored. Those games are spooky, right? Maybe you're just a little baby back bitch. No, I mean, I play with the lights on, but this is something different. I think it has something to do with this. Satan, the action figure. Oh.
In first person, you play the character as you. The vantage is yours, and by association, so is the body. But gamepads and TV screens convey limited information, and for that reason, the body feels foreign to me. But in third person, the vantage is extrasensory. I accept that I can't feel what the character's doing because I'm not them, but I am playing as them, much like I did when I played with my action figures as a kid, and that's why I prefer third person, or at least, that's my hunch.
When's the last time a AAA game really defied your expectations? Recently, big budget games have been bitten by the same bug that made Hollywood give us this shit. At some point, the ship gets so damn big that they don't need to steer it anymore, which leaves indie games to fill the creativity void. Then, Death Stranding happened. Say what you will about Kojima, but the guy does not stop trying. And look what that got us. The only AAA game in the last I don't know how many years that actually took a risk. Even if you didn't like Death Stranding, which is the wrong opinion, but whatever, you have to be glad it even exists. It's a game with indie level creativity and weirdness, but with AAA level polish and graphics. With this video, I want to urge you to be a bit more open-minded with the games you play. Even if the game isn't a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, if it brings something new to the table, give it a chance. We desperately need AAA games that break new ground and push the envelope, and for that, we need more people like you to play them. Speak with your wallets, guys. It's the only voice studios will listen to.
All great civilizations are built on the work of the exploited. Without great visionaries and slaves, we wouldn't have achieved amazing structures like the Pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, the United States of America, or even... I don't want to rant anymore! Yeah. I want to be free!
Ape Escape 4 will probably never happen, but does it need to? The spiritual successor carries on a game's legacy by reusing unique aspects of its gameplay and redefining them with modern sensibilities and new ideas. Shovel Knight famously called back to many aspects of different NES platformers, making it feel like an NES greatest hits compilation of sorts. Murder by Numbers takes Ace Attorney Investigations and combines it with a 90s aesthetic and Picross puzzles. And Bugsnax takes the idea of catching the collectible, as seen in the Ape Escape series, and expands on it. Instead of a level-by-level platformer, Bugsnax is a mission-based collectathon in an interconnected world. The story is given more weight with deeper characters and a more complex plot, and the music is more atmospheric, but most importantly, the collectathon gameplay has been expanded to its logical extreme. Each snack has its own AI, reacting to you, your various traps and gadgets, the environment, and even other bug snacks in unique ways. There's a new set of unique bug snacks in each area, so the variety is always fresh. Bug snacks take the simple act of finding, fighting, and catching monkeys in Ape Escape and transforms it into something more, with greater puzzle elements, greater combat sequences, greater exploration, all on top of its own set of ideas that make it something familiar yet wholly unique. Ape Escape 4 will probably never happen, but as long as games like Bugsnax are around to carry the torch, that's okay.
Keigare is a Japanese concept meaning corruption and defilement, both spiritual and physical. For From Software's games, this concept is important. Their original Japanese scripts use the phrase Keigare explicitly, but because this isn't a Western idea, in translation it doesn't quite carry over. Think of it like this. In nature, flowing waters are life because the motion cleans out impurities. Still waters are death because impurities there stack and these waters attract parasites. FromSoft likes to use parasites to show Keigare, be it the giant leeches in Blighttown, the ticks in the valley, vermin in the blood, or centipedes in Immortals. But it's even bigger than that. Every one of these games deals with corruption as the central narrative theme, but because it's such an Eastern concept, its application isn't immediately obvious to most Westerners.
What makes us like or enjoy a character above others? The obvious reason is that they're just extremely well written. Occasionally they can be funny and maybe add personality to the game or film. Or maybe we are role playing and we can relate easier. Other times they're simply what we call cool. We as the players or viewers can establish a connection or a relationship with a character because of the most minimal or mundane things, therefore enhancing our experience with a game or film. Whether it is hair and appearance in general, an ideology or point of view, relatability is important because audiences can feel empathy, sympathy, and can understand the character better. Players can imprint themselves into a character because they, like the character, are unprepared for the journey that lies ahead. Something like the ability to customize a character and pick their perks, skills, and gear makes the experience more personal. We essentially made them and we dictate their actions. Most of us can relate to someone like Joel or Don Draper, but we understand their story, where they come from, their pain, and their flaws, and show empathy for them. When a character behaves in a way that is so entertaining to watch, we enjoy them simply because of their personality and demeanor. Sometimes they're so cool that it is impossible not to like them.
This is the only authenticated portrait of Claude-Émile Jean-Baptiste Lyttle, the namesake for the unit of volume known as the liter. Born into a French winemaking family, he quickly showed his talents when it came to glassmaking. And although he's not a chemist himself, he's celebrated as the first person to manufacture highly accurate glass cylinders that pushed the field forward. His life was sadly cut short at the age of 62 due to cholera. Of course, everything I just told you is a lie. Claude Lyttle is not a real person, and the biography I just shared with you was an April Fool's prank by University of Waterloo professor Ken Woolner from 1978. The joke is that standardized SI units are only capitalized if they're named after a person. The exception to that rule is the liter, which is only capitalized to avoid confusion between the lowercase l and capital I. The fake biography was so convincing it got published in at least one textbook and even managed to fool IUPAC, who you might know as the group who gets to name all the chemical elements. I can't even blame Ken. He just wanted to put a face to the name.
Brian David Gilbert has quickly become one of my favorite creators on YouTube. He is a multi-talented individual who produced the comedy series Unraveled for Polygon, but his own creative work is where his qualities really shine. There are a few places where you can find cooking tutorials, songs, skits, and horror short films, all coherently on the same channel. Every project Brian releases has an atmosphere of spontaneous creativity to it, yet also feels like a planned and distinct vision. A lot of these videos aren't even grand prestigious projects, but instead fun, uninhibited ideas which are given the perfect amount of time to develop.
Hey, I got your ice cream!
I think the reason I resonate so much with what Brian creates is because I know what it's like to express yourself on this website. YouTube provides a lot of creative opportunities, but can also sometimes be at odds with ideas that are less popular. Seeing Brian thriving while also being so creatively free is really encouraging to me as another creator, because it lets me know that if the art you make is good enough, you can always succeed.
There's never gonna be another show like Joe Pera Talks with You. He immediately begins a story, and in that tale you can pick up on all the things he likes and dislikes, presented in a fashion so sincere, you can't help but either agree or at least understand. Joe likes rain, football, lightning, milk and wafers, and even the sound of liquid being poured into a glass. And that's within 1 minute of this story. And its sublimation is the key to Joe's work. Joe narrates in a fashion that is wholly disarming. He makes scripted content feel like a father reading a bedtime story to his children. Though it's clear this is a budgeted effort made by a team of creatives, it takes great care in not feeling this way. Joe Pera Talks with You is exactly what it says on the tin. You're Joe's friend. He's speaking to you, hoping you're delighted to listen. What an easy job that is.
Johnny Mnemonic is a cyberpunk action thriller and is the greatest film to have ever graced a blockbuster home video store. With its hero thrown from a life of luxury into the slums of a dystopian world ruled by megacorporations, it's a non-stop sequence of fight scenes highlighting aggressive classism and the withholding of important pharmaceutical advancements to generate profit. Ice-T is an anarchist revolutionary. Henry Rollins is an angry doctor fighting against a sickness caused by the world's wireless technology. Beat Takeshi sits in a chair for 10 minutes. Dolph Lundgren plays a religious cyborg hitman and is responsible for my favorite action movie one-liner, Jesus time. A frustrated Keanu Reeves plays a distressed and fed up man who just wants the success and happiness he's worked all his life to have.
Room service!
Every second of Johnny Mnemonic's over-the-top, outright ludicrous narrative is believable and earned. Watching Johnny slowly unravel as he's further exposed to life at the bottom is the main attraction, but keen eyes will see him regain his humanity through righteous anger and indignation. Also, there's a dolphin wearing an Oculus Rift who's really good at Beat Saber. His name is Jones.
It's a fish.
Please go watch Johnny Mnemonic, preferably with drinks and a few friends. Then come back and thank me once you have. Peace!
I'm Wiz, and this is Jeff, who lives at home. Jeff and I have a lot in common. We're both empathetic individuals who care deeply about our families, even in the face of some strained relationships. We're both burnouts who live in our parents' homes way past the time society would have expected us to leave. And ever since I watched Jeff, who lives at home, we're both often looking for a sign. Throughout the film, Jeff follows a series of unremarkable signs that divert his attention away from his initial quest to find some wood glue to repair the pantry door. In spite of getting jumped and repeatedly finding himself uncomfortably involved in his brother's failing marriage, Jeff displays unwavering conviction in his belief that the signs will lead him to find purpose in his life, his destiny. These signs lurch Jeff into despair again and again, and yet his search continues until this moment. A moment I dare not ruin for you because everyone losing hope needs to watch Jeff, who lives at home. Everyone and everything is interconnected in this universe. Stay pure of heart, and you will see the signs. Follow the signs, and you will uncover your destiny.
A 1-minute essay, huh? It's gonna be tough. Not a lot of time. Alright, gotta come up with a topic. Ideally something that isn't too overdone so it stands out. And it helped to give it a divisive yet catchy title to draw interest. Then it's a matter of writing down some of my thoughts on the subject before converting them into a proper script, which is always the toughest part. I mean, how do you easily articulate all these complicated feelings and opinions you have into a coherent structure that makes sense? Next stage, once the script is finalized, is recording the voiceover, with as little background noise as possible, followed by editing and mastering. Then open up Premiere to start putting all the pieces together, using only the highest quality footage possible. Maybe commission some assets from some artist friends. Plus, making sure the cuts between clips sync up with the flow of the voiceover so that it doesn't never feel off. Then the last thing we need to do is add in some fitting music to bring it all together, and it's done. Actually, on second thought, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm gonna pass.
Every second is a gift.
It's a sentiment most often invoked in a spiritual sense. Although usually well-intentioned, it more often than not comes across as a pious, finger-wagging exercise. A sort of coerced gratitude for the unseen, unexplainable forces that led us to the here and now. Lately, I've found myself taking a different interpretation. Every second is a gift not received, but given by us. Sometimes we give this gift to ourselves, in spite of everything that tries to convince us we haven't earned that right. And crucially, we choose to give this gift to others. We never quantify it on such a small scale, and yet, all too often, it's those fleeting moments that can make all the difference. In this sense, there's no need to fret over how we apportion every minute of every day. We need only strive to make these gifts an expression of compassion, both for ourselves and for those we care about. Because at the end of the day, what else is there? Thank you for the gift of your time today, and have a good one.
Everyone I know goes away in the end. And you could have it all. Empire dirt. My empire dirt. I'll let you down. I'll let you down. I'll make you hurt. If I could start again, a certain number of miles away, I swear to God, I'll keep myself. I would find a particular path along that way.
A particular path along that way.